This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Greetings, viewers. Welcome to Real Estate Matters. My name is Chester Mende. I'm the Managing Director of Shelter Zimbabwe. Today, in this episode, we have the honor of welcoming Mr. Kura Chihota to our show. Kura is known for his identity with the real estate. I'm sure it must be your middle name by now. Welcome.
I hope so. You can tell me that. Yeah,
Welcome, Kura.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kura, we've been talking about a lot of things. We've talked about the origins of Shelter, how it came to where it is today. We've talked about the real estate industry. I don't know what you may want to share with us that can benefit the viewers. This program is really designed to educate and inform our market on real estate, which in our view is a growing sector and an important one at that. And for that reason, society must be armed with correct information. I don't know your suggestions. What have you got to bring to the table?
No, I like the play on the word real estate matters, because there's real estate matters, then there's real estate really matters. So it's delightful. My personal mission is to put as much real estate in as many people's hands as possible so they can transform their lives. And when you're able to own a piece of ground, to build a house, to nurture a family, that's our contribution to our society. And I know you and your history, you are here because with the millions and billions that you've made, or trillions if we count them in Zimbabwe dollars, you choose to be here and impact this society because you are a son of the soil. So really, when we get the opportunity, when we're off Twitter and in the real world, I love engaging with, I dare call you Mdara. You're not that far away from me. Madara gaita semi, so that we can, really make things tangible and solid and credible so that people have exactly that information to go step by step. How do I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I used to do a TV show in South Africa with a pay line. There's no such thing as a stupid question. So any information that gets somebody's mind on the path to the property ladder to create wealth and generate something for their family, I relish that opportunity. So I wanted to talk to you really much about the state of the market, how certain technicalities work, and then some Zimbabwean nuances, if we can do that.
Right. Well, thank you about the Mudara bit. I am sure in that category. And yes, you and I have a duty. We are all passing the baton in life. That's the way nature is designed. When we started this program, we had been challenged by a banker who felt that there was a need to bring real estate to the table so that we can have a discussion about how this evolves to benefit our growing real estate market. A lot of people don't realize that they are players in real estate. They don't realize they are realtors. When in fact they are. Because you come from a house, you come from a flat, or wherever you are spending the night, that in itself brings you into the realm of real estate. Education. I read a book once by Hernando de Soto, who spoke about, capital.
The mystery of capital.
The mystery of capital it was, yeah. And you cannot get by without talking about real estate, albeit that the everyday person speaks about money, but the root of money has got to be real estate. And what an honor to have you here. And a privilege for me to have the opportunity to talk to live brains like yours, just to test my own. What I can share with you is that I will share with you my experience, and I hope that it complements where you are coming from and what you are doing on the street, because you've done a wonderful job. Keep it up, and a lot are benefiting from it, and will continue to benefit, because we are in a world that is forever changing.
I appreciate that. I've been very grateful for the opportunities that I've been given, the exposure that I've had, and whatever is in my head should be freely available. So we must be a community. We share information. I'm quite active on Twitter every day, trying to motivate and share. Why is it this way? Where's that opportunity? How did this person do that? So that the village is wiser. So let's take a start from the book that you referred to, The Mystery of Capital by Hernando de Soto, where he explained that titleless land we've lost value. Right. If we can peg the ground and we can give title, and then that title becomes an economic asset, it goes into, I'm not getting into fancy terms, part of our balance sheet. Somebody who has a particular asset is able to collateralize that, big word. He can use it as a base to extract value. He can get a loan, he can borrow to build the house. So he's now accessing the capital markets. So in Zimbabwe, with our years of history, 43 years of history, we had a period where a teacher or a bank worker could go to a building society and get a mortgage loan and build their house in any of the townships that we've seen going out. Where have we seen the evolution of property finance in Zimbabwe from where we were to where we are now? What's been the difference in this hyperinflation kind of space?
Well, Zimbabwe is a very interesting country in many ways. And I always say to people, talk to me about nothing but Zimbabwe, because I know nothing else. I've visited many countries across the world. I've enjoyed my tour across the African continent because you can see real movement. Certainly the one thing that is very clear in Zimbabwe is that our growing population has brought with it new demands in every respect. And real estate in the last 5 years has come and made its own statement. If you spoke real estate 10 years ago, you were probably talking to a few. The last 5 years, it's become very topical. You cannot ride a bus and not have two people that are talking about something related to real estate. They're talking about a stand, they're talking about the cost of building materials, they're talking about what happened with their plumber, what happened with their town planner, what happened with when they went with their plans to the council to submit them for approval and so on. So we're in interesting times. And if there is anything like giving names to phases, we certainly are going through the real estate phase.
Well, and that's the time for some of us to at least make a contribution. So let's go to first things first, all right? How does it go about from somebody who has a piece of land, a farm or what have you in a peri-urban area was included in the urban boundary? What is the path to getting from that to a stand kuti nizopinda muchirongwa ndizoita landlord? What are the steps to getting to title?
Right. The first obvious step for the farm owner is to go and get change of use. And he or she will get that from their local authority. You need to be very careful, because when a city extends its boundaries, like Harare has done in the recent past, if you go to the north, before very long, you are in Domboshawa. Now, a man who has a farm in Domboshawa or a man who has a farm in Harare South has got to know which local authority he falls under. And it's very easy to know who your local authority is because you simply look at the man who sends you the rates bill. That man or woman who sends you the rates bill is your local authority, and you go to them for change of use. When you've got change of use, the next thing is you then bring in a town planner, and the town planner will normally travel along with him a land surveyor, and from that they have designed a layout. That layout is what then goes out to your civil engineers who want to cut roads, water, sewer, electricity, and with that you have got an estate planned. That estate planned is not complete until the roads are in place, the water is in place, the sewer is in place. Because of the developments of the last 5 years that I've alluded to, the pace at which local authorities give their approval to the demand on the market is not the same. So there is a mismatch. With the result, the local authorities have introduced what they call parallel development. And what happens with parallel development is that the professionals are busy in the background, pegging, building the roads, cutting the trenches for sewer and water, whilst the homeowner is building. But don't build until the land on which you are building is surveyed, until the land on which you're building has got title. It is the title that then converts your real estate to something bankable.
And bankable. So I think that's a discussion that I'd love to have with you and other developers along the way, to say the legislation that we have, where if it's urban land, or the process that you're only going to get title upon completing the physical infrastructure, and then you start the top structure development, that's messy. And then this parallel permitting creates another mess. The completion certificates and compliance certificates is another mess, but that's a detailed discussion for another day. So you've given the advice that there are parties in concern. You need to look at a title deed. You need to look at an approved subdivision, which is going to show pegs and stands, and then you're going to be given a path to title. And that is when there is the transfer of a right to you personally that the whole world knows. The deeds office is not a secret office. It's a place that doors are open 200 days of the year, every working day, where you can go as Chester Mende and survey and say, look, this stand, who owns it? How big is it? What four corners does it have if it's a regular shape? And you're able to access that. I think if we've put that information and nothing else out today, that people can understand every piece of ground has got a birth certificate. A birth certificate, So a piece of ground has a title deed, and that title deed is a unique identifier that allows you to go out into the world and then access the capital markets.
Right. And also we need to remind the viewers out there that the layout diagram and the title deed is not the be and end of all. Because you actually need the building drawings from an architect, which then take you to construction, and then you have occupation. I have a friend out there. I'm sure you've run into him, Dr. Sasha Jogi. In my book is Professor Sasha Jogi, because his approach to real estate is so meticulous and is very particular about process. He must be enjoying this kind of conversation.
I hope so. We've learned enormous, and the work that he's done is huge. It's huge. So that's why we like getting in touch, because you've done it. So we can learn from that. So why is it important to have a title deed? Going back to our earlier conversation, a title deed, dead capital, accessing capital. Why is a title deed so important?
The title deed, if you go to my favorite, the Rural and Urban Councils Act, it's a key legislation that defines ownership. So that I don't encroach in your space, the title deed has the four corners to my piece of land. So if I encroach in your space, all we have to do is put our two title deeds on the table, and they will show us who has gone into whose space. So that is what gives it, why it is important. But also, that right to title is in itself the beginning of value. If you go back to history, you will find that the origins of money was barter trade. Kura Chihota vairima zviyo nemanhanga vachizodzura vachinge vaine zvavanotengesa vadzura, kana vanotengesa hupfuoro, manhuchu, mbuya mhende vaikuya dovi ravo, and business was on that basis. Mbuya Chihota vauya nezviyo zvavo, mbuya mhende voenda vonovapa dovi. That was the exchange, that was value. Those are the origins of money. And in exactly the same way, we have to look at title. A man who has a woman who has a piece of land that they, is their possession, they've inherited it, they've purchased it, however way they came into it, then use that as a medium of exchange with the next man, a woman who wants something that they have. Maybe I'm giving you my land in exchange for your motor car. This is why fundamentally for me, produce and land are the cornerstones of capital.
Now, on the cornerstone of capital, a global measure of the worth of a country is often the GDP. We can criticize it as a tool, but if I look in the region, and I'm grateful to do a significant amount of work outside of Zimbabwe, if I look at South Africa and Botswana, we look at the mortgage book as a percentage, so mortgages as a percentage over the GDP of a country, we get to the 38% or so in Botswana. When we're here in Zimbabwe, the amount that is lent against property is not even 1%. So we are, as a country, underexposed. How do we get this asset producing more for more people by accessing finance and so if I buy a piece of ground, then I need to buy some bricks, and I need to buy cement, and I need to buy the electrical cabling, then I need to hire some guys. I can't import sand from Zambia. So there's some elements that are just locally supplied, my 3/4 stones, river sand, and all the rest. It's a multiplier. How do we unlock mortgage finance in Zimbabwe?
Well, interesting you raised that question. It's $1 million question. I don't envy the regulators and government who are responsible for this. But central to this is a discussion with long-term finance institutions like your insurance companies and your pension funds. By legislation, these people are protected to do a certain job, to perform a certain role in society. Are they performing that role? They are receiving long-term money. And it's logical that long-term money must be housed in long-term assets. These institutions must be brought into discussion. But unfortunately, the Zimbabwean capital market is in a bit of a situation right now. Some stability is necessary. You need to revive and restore the compartments where you have the long-term institutions, financial institutions, identified and sticking to their core business of long-term. Receive pension fund money, receive insurance money, and they need to go and invest it in something that is of an equal character, such as real estate. That is how you bring back mortgage. I am unpopular for saying banks are now delving into real estate, which is not their business, and I'm not afraid to continue to say that. Banks are supposed to be a trusted agent with people's resources. As soon as they become developers, they are gambling. If you go back to what happened with the Reserve Bank a few years ago, he shut down a couple of banks because of that. And I warn the current bankers that unless they are going to be responsible and stick to their knitting, the day is going to come when the same old thing is going to repeat itself.
Okay. I was being updated on the latest statistics around where pension fund money is. And it's moved significantly. If we looked at the end of last year, if we look at the IPEC reports, pension funds held about 44% of their assets in real estate. In the first quarter of 2023, that's come down significantly. Pension funds take a view that it's long-term money. We need stable income-producing assets. What else and what other players, what is the shape of demand? You're selling product. Who is taking up that product and what's foremost in their mind? Is it a consumption play? Is it an investment play? Is it a storage of value play when people are buying stands from Shelter Zimbabwe?
Housing in Zimbabwe is a culture. You as a young father, and many out there as young parents will go out to the market to look for housing so that their families have a home. The next thing for them is education for their children and food on the table. Now, housing is a storage facility to store value so that your value grows into something when you need it tomorrow. So I would say the majority of the consumers that are coming into Shelter are addressing it from a cultural point of view where they need a home, but just as many, if not more, are using it to store their value so that when they need it tomorrow, they can sell and convert the cash and use it for some other business of the family.
Okay. And how about people using it as a vehicle for creating wealth? So I buy a stand, I buy it over time with installments. You guys offer significant installments. Then I build incrementally out of savings. Then I have a complete house, which I can then sell on. Are you seeing many, call it small scale developers? I'm not talking about doing 100 stands, but literally building to sell. Are you seeing that as a play?
Well, it's very interesting. We are not only seeing building to sell, we are seeing building to rent out. I went to a funeral the other day in one of the suburbs, and my favorite it happens to be the one I was visiting at the time, which is in National, or some would know it as Mbare. There is lodges in Mbare. People have renovated their homes, and there are lodges there that are being rented, for short stay. But maybe in our next session, we will go deeper into that discussion.
This moment was proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society. A very small percent of smart people can predict what the future holds and invest wisely. Investments that guarantee a secure future and generational wealth. Real estate is one investment that can never go wrong, especially when dealing with a tried and tested company. As Shelter Zimbabwe, having been in the property development business for over 3 decades, we derive satisfaction in giving our valued clients smart housing solutions, providing modern and sustainable built-up residential spaces of unsurpassed quality. Be a smart investor. Discover and experience the joy of owning a home. Yes, where others see just land, we see not only homes, but a lifestyle so desirable and worth living. A redefinition of urban living in a modern, urban, and serene environment. Witness the beauty of a worthwhile and secure investment by a team which brings it all together and dedicated to achieving extraordinary results. With us, you can get a service stand where you can build your dream home to suit your unique taste and style, as we offer an assortment of high, medium, and low density housing options. We are there to create endless possibilities. Our ultimate desire being to build homes specifically designed with you in mind, to give you the luxury and comfort you deserve. With 1-bedroom apartments for young professionals, 2-bedroom apartments for growing families, and spacious 3-bedroom apartments with ample space for maximum expression. At Shelter Zimbabwe, your dream home is just a step away. This movement is proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.
Welcome back, viewers. Kura, when we went for the break, you had provoked discussion on value addition. And I had shared some of the developments. I have to continue to say that I love this country called Zimbabwe. It is a pace setter in my life, in many things. For example, just to digress for a minute, if you look at what is happening in the agriculture industry, where we've exceeded record in tobacco, and the same in a number of other areas, I think mining. The trend is continuing in real estate, and we have now reached that stage where we are mobilizing value in real estate. And the example that I gave about Mbare or National, as I knew it when I was growing up, I was quite impressed. You go in there and there is a lodge. So I went into a conversation with the fellow at reception. I said, tell me, a lodge in Mbare, who is your customer? I was most impressed. Do you know who their customer is?
No, sir. I think that's Utenge Sabana.
I know. Their customer is the fellows that come to Mbare to sell produce, and the fellows that come to Mbare to buy produce. And guess what? There is people coming from as far as Beitbridge and Victoria Falls to buy produce from Mbare. And I was like, wow, who would have thought that? Because I would have thought that these guys are staying, in the traditional hotels and, traditional lodges and Airbnb. No. There is lodges in Mbare within walking distance of where you get produce. So that is, I don't know how you have, your own experience in your own path.
So that's why we're kindred spirits. Real estate is done by walking around,
right?
And you see something, you say, why is this there, and what are the underlying? So over and above those lodges that are like that, there is a rental model that's going on. Those stands, Zirgunashinari, are a bit bigger, 300, 350 square meters, and they were designed to be modular. So the core house was well set at the back. So there's a lot of room for expansion. So there's a particular developer who's putting in rooms. He's getting $100 a month. He puts in Wi-Fi, tiled floors, and it's now very convenient. Somebody say, do I pay $250 to stay in town in the avenues, or ndogara kune transport kurinani zvako? If national in particular, you can go to KFC, you can go to Chicken Inn, which is just across the road. It's got a very strong economy that's happening there, and real estate is responding to those needs. That landlord has developed space that was historical. My father's dad's brother, Sekuru Vangu, had a house there. It's been extended, it's been developed, and national economy karipo. So real estate, I love it because of its responsiveness to the environment and the opportunities. And who would have thought, if we would talk rentals per square meter, for an 8 square meter room, you're getting $100 a month.
Well, talking about that, gentrification has arrived. Whether you like it or not, Mbare is now speaking a different language. We have to do something about, rejuvenating, and it's already speaking to itself on this topic. So urban renewal is right on top of us, and what an opportunity.
Threat and opportunity. If it's not regulated, and if our regulators are not as sharp as the market needs them to be, then we get stuck with 1964 Rhodesian legislation, which used to have no natives or one native family per, and that becomes a constraint.
Absolutely. I hope the directors of housing across the country are listening, because the same way that Mbare is ready for urban renewal, so is Chinotimba in Victoria Falls, and I could say the same for a number of other towns and cities across Zimbabwe. I would love to be sitting in front of a director of housing to find out how he's doing his job right now, because it must be exciting times.
I would appreciate the opportunity for those directors of housing to take the time and come through. We grab a cup of tea and we go and want to see our Honorable Minister of National Housing and Social Amenities. His energy and him coming from our industry as a professional, he's seen the administrative bottlenecks and he has a vision on the technology, on the speed, on alternative building technologies. He wants to see the Zimbabwe of the future. And the Zimbabwe of the future cannot, and we can never accept it, that those who ruled us with malice, their rules hold us back from moving forward with progress. We must move with progress where the real estate asset meets the needs of the people and takes us forward and releases value. Real estate, and my key thing is always highest and best use. Highest and best use is, what does the market demand today, right? And then you apply a process to that and you say, okay, where is this piece of ground? Who wants to use it? What can they afford to pay? And then can I profitably supply that? So when you talk of gentrification, a big term, it's very simple. Are you applying new money to an old product to take us into the future? And that's what we must be about, because this asset is something that I want to leave my kids and my kids' kids, and they look after it, and then they receive the benefit of the capital appreciation and an income that comes out of that. That's what real estate is. It's the gift that keeps on giving. If you read the autobiography of the American Congressman Andrew Young, he tells you about the transformative process of owning real estate. That if your dad bought you a house and he left you a house and you are streets ahead, you're now actually part of an economy, you're part of a society, you are the landed. You are empowered.
You are empowered. The Emir of United Arab Emirates, someone I admire, he talks about wealth in a very interesting way. He tells us of how his grandfather used to get around in a camel. And today he gets around in a Mercedes. So this is how we all develop and grow into something better. Yes, our Minister of National Housing, directors of housing, why maybe we should be calling them to a workshop and having a little chat over, like you say, a cup of tea, and just hear what their ideas are, and how we can mesh this into something that will benefit future generations. I'm sure the minister and the directors of housing would love that.
Wow, if we could unshackle ourselves, right? If we're talking Mbare, we can talk Mbare, we can talk Sakubva, we can talk Dangamvura. You had those horrible single African male accommodation.
Yeah, and Msana Wenzowi in Kadoma.
That's what they thought of us.
Yeah.
The rules that are there are to enforce that.
Right.
We are here, sons and daughters of liberation heroes that have given us a country. It's for us to release the value. You've educated some of us. We've had exposure outside. Let's harness those ideas. I'm not saying that a foreign idea is better, but it must be homegrown. And Anovakanyika are the people, the children of the country. So let's build the country. Let's take a view to say, how do we not hinder development, but how do we manage responsible development? Guidelines are always great, but let us rather let the horse run and keep it within the racetrack than say, no, we're keeping them in the stables because they might run too fast for us because our legislation is behind. Legislation, that's why we have parliament. That's why parliament is an active body. That's why they have the ability to pass laws. If we've got old laws that are not serving us, we need to change them. We've got legislation that used to describe a telephone network as copper wires between my house and your house. The world has moved on. It's now digital. The law has changed to understand. So why can't we get the same thing in real estate?
Definitely.
Why can't we get a digital deeds registry? Why do we have to pay these exorbitant charges to just go and look at a town planning document? I'm paying very real US dollars to do that. It makes things very expensive and hinders our development.
Definitely, particularly when you accept and acknowledge the fact that Zimbabwe is very well structured. Yes. For the life of me, I cannot understand why a local authority is allowed by law to receive a plan from me, whether it is a layout or it is the building drawings, and he sits on them. And I must wait for him or her to put a stamp on it before I will go on my stand and put pegs and start trenching for my foundation. I think the tail can't continue to wag the dog. And I believe this is material for this discussion with the minister and the directors of housing. We should turn the tables and say that we have given you the plan, you have 6 weeks to approve. At the end of 6 weeks, if you haven't approved, I will continue to proceed on the ground, and there's nothing I've done wrong. Particularly because Zimbabwe is so structured. The plan I put before you has been drawn by a qualified architect, for God's sake. What else are you going to add to it except just to circulate so that your system knows that a building is about to arrive? So why are you sitting on it for 6 months? Why have you become God? Without you, I can't build. I think, if we are going to continue with the growth and progress and development that, we are seeing and the buzz around us, we have got to get the authorities to attend to these issues so that we are in tune with where we are. The other one that, for me, needs urgent attention, like yesterday, is our building specifications. You look at some of these concrete tiles that we are putting on top of our house. That concrete tile clearly was designed by somebody who was coming from snow. We have no snow here. Why do we have that concrete tile, for God's sake? So some of these specifications have got to be looked at. Why are we having a 114 and a 230 wall? Can't we have a discussion around that?
Sure. No, you're touching on two nerves. So my experience in South Africa is that developers got hugely frustrated, and they took it through all the legislation, and you now have that default system. that if you have a competent plan drawn up and submitted timeously, the clock starts ticking when you submit it.
Right.
And if it is administratively deemed approved, if they haven't given you a reasonable and rational response within time. So that at least gets us all moving. On the specifications, you're doing God's work today. And I'm grateful that the minister says, look, bring us any alternative building technology. In South Africa, you have two standards. You have the national building standards, then you have a variation of that called agrément. And agrément is really just a test to say a load-bearing wall, the strength that you got out of a 230 millimeter wall, is this alternative technology, be it concrete shattering, be it light steel frame, whatever it is, does it meet the practical output that is required? If it does, it's tested by, we've got Zimbabwe Standards Association. They do the test, they certified, Makutofamba Nebora, because the one brick on top of another brick is labor intensive, it's slow, it entrenches certain interests. And I think we can move a lot faster by adopting technologies without at all diminishing the quality.
Absolutely. You know, I'm on record as having said good things about the late minister, the late John Nkomo. You know, he was one for alternative technology. His argument was, and he took us to his hut where he was raised by his grandmother. And he says, this is where I was born, guys. This is where I was raised. This place is still there. Can you explain to me about your 115 and your 230 wall? Because this is not even 100, and it's still standing, and it has been standing for how many decades? This is interesting discussion, and I'm sure you know, it'll be something that we can look at. And not only that, it will create opportunities. You know, I am for empowering the youths of tomorrow. And if we can do something about alternative technology and downgrading, if downgrading is the word, some of our heavily weighted specifications, I think it will do us good for growing our economy.
Let's make up an English word, disengineering these very high costs.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so now in my Twitter inbox, when things get quiet, somebody is going to say, oh, but Kura, this property in Johannesburg costs 200,000. In Zimbabwe, it's 400, 500,000. Why, and I ask this with all humility, why are Zimbabwean properties so expensive?
Very interesting discussion. Johannesburg, Harare, Lusaka, Nairobi, and Lagos are the measurement points. In fairness to Zimbabwe, one of the reasons is that we are landlocked. Therefore, the imported material costs more to get it here. But it takes us back to the earlier point. Why are we importing the material in the first place? Is it necessary? If you look at Rhodesia, Rhodesia was based on substitute. You were substituting that which you couldn't import from the original people. And it demonstrated to us that we didn't need these colonial suppliers. We could do it in another way. So, yeah, that is the other issue that is very, 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 very central to cost. We have got massive imported inflation and massive over-specification that has got to be addressed. I know that, with our Zimbabwean community that came from Oxford and Harvard and all these places and that love their colonial masters to bits, they will want to shoot at me, but I look forward to that shooting match because I'm sure I'll come out of there a victor.
Okay, so if we're doing the scientific analysis and we say the product, the output is expensive, you've given me an argument that the inputs are expensive. How do we explain this gap between, okay, so it's expensive, but in theory, I can sell my house in Glenlone and I can go and buy in Bryanston at a lower price. What's the rationale for that gap in value?
Well, there are two. arguments. The first one is perception. But the second one is, to some extent, a suggestion that there is a shortage of supply in this market, because generally the basic rules of economics about supply and demand must play a part. And the imported inflation that I spoke about, and the overspecification. These are some of the things that we have got to do something about. But the proliferation and the massive growth in housing delivery is going to impact on us. If you use the scale on the basis of the 5 examples I gave, if you go into Nairobi, you will be shocked. The house you thought was expensive in Harare is nothing compared to what you will find it in Lusaka, and worse when you get to Nairobi. So it's all to do with this thing about perception, about supply. Clearly, when you get to Nairobi, you can see it from a mile that there is a huge shortage of supply. That is why the price is over the moon.
No. The thing I love about traveling in the region is this question is always asked, and the interventions are very different. And I'm very grateful that in Zimbabwe, it's a free market. Whoever wants to buy, buys. Whoever wants to sell, sells. In Botswana, they came in where the locals, who a number of them travel, but some of them were not as well traveled, and also became political. They said, my foreigners and participation in our market, so the government came in and put a 30% surcharge on a transfer duty for a foreign sale to say, let's get these guys out of the market.
Wow.
The net effect is you've got a thinner market, so it becomes lumpier. The prices are not as fluid, because the majority of owners there were actually Botswana. So you've actually tampered with the capital markets, and the net effect is you maintain an expensive product instead of just letting people and the market take care of it. And it's a capital-intensive play. Real estate is not a cheap thing that Nyamune and Sons just decides to get into, but it has such a value creation mechanism that it creates revenue, it creates capital appreciation, and is transferable in the long term.
Yeah, some of these things you can't tamper with. They are the product of basic rules. Supply and demand is a very key tenet of economics. You play around with this 30% or whatever to try and create an artificial situation, it'll just come back to hit you. And I hope that society in general is going to take a leaf from this to say that if supply and demand instructs what we do in general, I think we will enjoy a different market environment to one where it is over-regulated, because some of the regulation then tends to be emotional and the market reacts. I'm sure the lesson from Botswana is a big lesson that we must learn from, and hopefully our officials will learn from it not to do that, and try and allow supply and demand to dictate the pace at which we do things. I don't know if we have answered your question. Are you satisfied on why property in Johannesburg is cheaper than it is in Harare, or do you have another way of looking at it and understanding?
I think the arguments are multi-pronged, that in Zimbabwe there's a scarcity factor. So we can go back to what was Fort Salisbury or Fort Victoria or Bulawayo as it was spelled then, that it was a planned center and it had a certain capacity. So there are 20,000 properties that have an address north of Samora Machel, and if you want to buy it, you're going to have to dislodge somebody from that, so you're going to pay up. That guy's not going to relinquish that position unless you offer him X amount, and it's a free market and we can trade it. Secondly to that, I think we are a riskier market because you've invested capital. It's equity that's in that. It's not a tradable position that I got a mortgage from FNB and I bought the property. So if it goes beyond a certain value, I can relinquish it to the bank and exit a position. Zimbabwe, you put very real dollars into a very real property, right, and to be dislodged from that, you have to pay for it. Yes. But I'd like to take the conversation in another direction. We are sitting here this morning and we're considering, let's take a 10-year view. What do our urban centers, and Harare is not Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is not Harare, we do have Bulawayo, Gweru, Kwekwe. What does urban Zimbabwe look like 10 years from now? Best case scenario.
I see high-rise buildings. You have to go that way. We can't compete with the distance between Harare and Macheke and try and fill it fast. We should be competing the distance between here and the sun and go up that way, because that land between here and Macheke is supposed to be for agriculture. So I see high-rise buildings. I see high-value condominiums, and I see high-value flats. That would be for me the most significant that I see 10, 20 years from now. But when you provoke this discussion, you give me shingles, because if it is true that we have got 5 million Zimbabweans in the diaspora, God forbid that those 5 million come back home. Because if we talk about scarcity now, can you imagine when that 5 million come back? Because all 5 million will be urbanites. And our urban settlements are not ready for that. Obviously we would like them back. And obviously when they come, we're obviously going to have 14-story blocks of flats.
Well, I look forward to such a future. I think that the diaspora with exposure and capital, because people will have made money outside. They may want to return home. I know the aspiration is to be buried at home or to see out their sunset years here at home. That element and the quality that they're expecting drives a certain behavior in our market to supply that kind of quality. And long gone are those expectations of 4,000 square meters with one house in the corner. The densification that we can talk about, Edinburgh Road or West Road to the west of the city, I think we're going to only see that accumulate and move forward. So the real estate future, if I've got 10 grand, 15 grand available to me now by myself or in cooperation with my cousins and brothers, where should we put 15 grand with a 10-year view?
I would put it into real estate. I believe that your money will grow with a lot more certainty than it would anywhere else. Because of the reasons that we have given. And the other thing also about, going up is security. If I'm on the 14th floor of a building, I'm highly unlikely to be burgled. And crime is a reality. So we are living in a world where we have to accept these realities. That's where I would put my money. Some people talk about putting money in mining. Good luck. If you look at the way the minerals fluctuate, I would no. And I don't think it's to do with the fact that I'm a real estate person. I think it's to do with reality. The empowerment that comes with housing, the security that comes with real estate cannot be matched, in my opinion.
So on the human level, tell me what it does for you as Nkoma Chester Mende to go and walk through the townships that you've developed, township being a group of stands, to say, I had an idea, I had a piece of land, I took it through this process, and Patorine town diripo. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel great, but at the same time, makes me feel very angry. My first development 40 years ago was Glenview 2 and 3. And angry because the local authority is not in step with reality. If I had wanted to build a block of flats in Glenview 2 and 3 40 years ago, I would have been fighting against thunder because the regulator would have just told me to go and jump. The same, is the case right now. Right now you have a rule book that says flats shall be the preserve of government. And I'm like, yeah, give me a break. On what basis? Particularly if you are doing the flats in the high density settlements. Surely government on its own does not have resources to build all the flats that are required. It's that strange regulation that I find almost compelling that we have this coffee that I was talking about with the minister and the directors of housing, because they don't benefit anything at a personal level. So why do they administer strange things like that?
So with that, we must have that conversation. For us to go forward, it's going to take implementation of men with vision.
Obviously, I think we need to come together and seek a meeting of minds so that we can move together. Because I'm positive that they want what we want and we want what they want. We just need to get together and agree that.
Any parting shots from us?
Parting shots? Real estate is the place to be, to store your value. Real estate has got to be on the table with the various players so that we can agree how and what to do, when. I would say, and real estate must go up. It cannot continue to go like it is this, urban proliferation. It's just expensive. Real estate is the way to go for security. Those would be my parting shots. I don't know yours.
My late mentor says, Kura, real estate is the best get rich slowly scheme there is. If we take our time and we do it properly, we can create an asset that will outlive me and my kids' kids.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody ever discussed your name. Your name, Kura, is grow, isn't it?
Kuraone. I won't say Kuraone, Nyika, I'll just say Kura.
So, ngati kure in real estate kutiko tuone upumi wakareba. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ngoma.
This moment was proudly brought to you by Shelter Zimbabwe. Shelter Zimbabwe. We nurture our society.